Good morning and welcome to the California State Board of Optometry's public board meeting, our first meeting for 2026. My name is Jeffrey Garcia. I am serving as the board president currently. This morning we are meeting at the Department of Consumer Affairs located in Sacramento, California. Today we will have a designated time on the agenda for public comment for items not on the agenda, and I will ask for public comment on each agenda item as we go. I ask that you please be respectful of the need to conduct the board's business, and I want to ask all of you to please turn your cell phones to silent. This meeting is available via WebEx teleconference. However, the board webcasting meeting is only as a courtesy to the public, and the meeting will continue even if the webcast fails pursuant to the notice given in the agenda. Individuals listening to the meeting will have an opportunity to provide public comment and will be assisted by our moderator, who will be facilitating the teleconference process. For those members of the public participating via teleconference, please wait until the moderator has introduced you before making your comments. Each person will be limited to 2 minutes per agenda item. The board welcomes public comment on any item on the agenda, and it's the board intent to ask for public comment prior to the board making any final action on any agenda item. If for some reason I forget to ask for public comment on the agenda item and you wish to speak on that item, please raise your hand and you will be recognized. Today's meeting will be run according to the Opens Meeting Act as required by law. We plan to end today by 4 p.m. As we do at each meeting and before we do roll call of the meeting, I would like to state our mission, vision, and values. The mission of the California State Board of Optometry is to protect the health and safety of California consumers through licensing, registration, education, and the regulation of optometry and opticianry. Our vision is to have the highest quality optometric and optical care for the people of California. Our values are consumer protection, integrity, transparency, professionalism, excellence, and diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging. Now we'd like to call the meeting to order and ask our secretary, Ms. Bragg, Dr. Bragg, to please call the roll call.
Member Clemens. Present. Member Dawson.
Present.
Member Sue.
Present.
Member Kleppa.
Present.
Dr. Pruitt.
Present.
Dr. Tedder.
Present.
Dr. Wong.
Present.
Dr. Bragg present. Vice President Linden. Present. President Garcia.
Present. Have a quorum. So let's move to agenda item number 2, public comments for items not on the agenda. Please step forward to the microphones. Good morning.
Good morning, board members. I'm Ruby Garcia, the Executive Officer of California State Society for Opticians. Super excited just to share with you that we are going to be launching a apprenticeship program for high school juniors and seniors that will launch in February. And we're working with the Pleasanton School Unified School District. So we'd like to give our juniors and seniors an opportunity to consider to become opticians or go on to be doctors. And the beauty of this is you have learned 5 of our apprentices are going on to be doctors and 2 of them are going to be teaching that course. They're super excited. And then just my other point is, as we're going into the 2-year degree program discussion and the bachelor's, we're looking into what is being tested, and hopefully there'll be some discussions about new technology, because what is being tested is still tested on older technology. Thank you.
Thank you. So in high school, I did that. I took the optician course, and that was kind of the beginning of my optometry journey. So thank you for doing that. Yeah.
May I ask her a quick question?
Of course.
Ruby, how long does the program last? And is it something that's going to be reoccurring?
It will last, it's going to last for semester. So a high school semester, that's why it's February through, I believe it's June. It's like almost 16 weeks. Yes, and it's going to be both online and in person. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions from the board? Any more public comment in the audience present today? Seeing none. Any public comment from those online?
is the moderator for members of the public on WebEx. If you would like to make a comment for items not on the agenda, please click the raise hand icon. Or if you're an audio-only participant, you can raise your hand by pressing *3 on your device. All right, and this is the moderator. It appears there are no requests for public comment at this time.
Thank you. Okay, let's move on to agenda item number 3, which is the discussion and possible action on meeting minutes. So board members, if you've already read the meetings, please provide a motion or any corrections.
I move we approve the minutes.
I'll second it.
Okay, we have a first and a second. Is there any public comment from those in the audience? Seeing none, is there any public comment for those on the phone or online?
This is the moderator for members of the public on WebEx. If you would like to make a public comment for agenda item 3, please click the raise hand icon, or if you're an audio-only participant, you can raise your hand by pressing *3 on your device. All right, and this is the moderator. It appears there are no requests for public comment at this time.
Thank you. Secretary Bragg, please perform the roll call vote.
Member Clemens.
Aye.
Member Dawson.
Aye.
Member Sue.
Aye.
Member Kleppa.
Aye.
Dr. Pruitt.
Aye.
Dr. Tedder.
Aye.
Dr. Wong.
I'm going to abstain since I was absent from that meeting.
Dr. Bragg, aye. Vice President Linden.
Aye.
President Garcia.
I vote aye. The motion passes. But she's going to present. Okay, we're moving on to agenda item number 4, discussion and possible action on Department of Consumer Affairs. Members today joining us virtually and in person. Okay. Ms. Jones, Assistant Deputy Director, Board of Bureau Relations from the Department of Consumer Affairs, is with us in person today. Thank you for being here.
Good morning. It's on. Yeah, can you hear me? Gotta get a little closer. Good morning. I'm Am Shelley, and the new Assistant Deputy Director for Board and Bureau Relations. It's a pleasure to be here today to share some information for you about the department. First up, our DCA executive team has had some changes. We're excited to announce that Chief Deputy Director Christine Lawley has been named the Acting Director for the department. She enters this role following the retirement of DCA Director Kimberly Kirkmeyer. Director Lawley brings extensive experience to the position, having served in multiple leadership roles within the department since 2013. She will lead DCA in this position until a director has been formally appointed by the governor's office. And those of us in the executive office would like to thank the board and their staff for all the work and your partnership over this last year. We're excited about the coming year and all the opportunities that await us. A brief report on governor's activities recently. On January 8th, he delivered his final State of the State address, reaffirming California's role as a national beacon for democracy and an economic engine with conscience, pushing back against federal overreach while boldly investing in jobs, education, affordability, climate action, and recovery from the Los Angeles wildfires. On January 9th, he also released his proposed budget, which is balanced for the coming fiscal year, reflecting a surge in state revenues, forecasting more than $42 billion higher than projected at last year's enacted budget. The budget does not include new significant spending proposals. Instead, it builds on prior policy successes and continues to implement critical investments in priorities, such as education, affordability, small businesses, wildfire mitigation, and more. On the subject of the LA fires, this month marked 1 year since the devastating firestorm that swept through Los Angeles County. California remains committed to helping survivors recover with an all-of-government approach, building on efforts that have accelerated recovery and supported communities. On this anniversary, DCA 2 reaffirms its commitment to support survivors and helping the community to heal. Also related to the LA fires, Governor Newsom took action to assist licensees affected by the fires and swiftly issued an executive order to allow a 1-year postponement of renewal fees for survivors impacted by the fires that were due for renewal between January and June of 2025. DCA began sending notices this month to licensees who renewed their license in 2025 and chose this postponement option, with a reminder about the 1-year postponement and renewal fee due dates.
Licensees with license types in the Breeze system can pay these renewal fees through their online account, while all licensees with license types that are not in the Breeze system may submit their payments via mail. As we've mentioned in the past, last year, Governor Newsom released his proposed 2025-26 state budget, which included a proposal to split DCA's oversight agency. The Business Consumer Services and Housing Agency will now be split into two state agencies. They'll be called the California Housing and Homelessness Agency and the Business and Consumer Services Agency. The new Business and Consumer Services Agency will be responsible for consumer affairs, licensing, and enforcement, and the Department of Consumer Affairs would be among 8 departments in that new agency. Those 2 new agencies will officially become operative this July 1st. DCA is continuing to participate in multiple agency work groups to deal with the logistics required to make this transition to the new agency, and will continue to keep board leadership apprised through the months ahead. A quick reminder regarding travel and fiscal prudency to best serve the public. It is incumbent upon all of us to ensure that we are being fiscally prudent in our decisions, especially when traveling for board business. DCA would like to remind members and staff to evaluate if rental cars are always necessary versus ride-sharing services. Carpooling is also highly encouraged when renting vehicles. We know there may be new travel costs to members being experienced as well, similar such as baggage charges. So please keep your receipts to make sure you can get reimbursed for those. As we kick off a new year, we also enter the season of Form 700 Statement of Economic Interests. We want to provide a reminder that those filings are due by April 1st. For new appointees, your assuming office statement is due within 30 days of assuming your office, and if you leave your appointment, it's due within 30 days of leaving, and then annually there by April 1st. This year's annual filing period covers the prior calendar year. Just as a reminder, it'll cover from January 1st, 2025 through December 31st of 2025. And although the filing deadline is Wednesday, April 1st, to ensure compliance, we would like to have our filers complete the e-filing by March 20th. And just as also as a reminder, board members must file through FPPC's e-filing system that was established last year. They cannot accept paper copies. You should have already received an email from the FPPC with instructions on how to file, as well as an email from myself. If you have any questions, please contact Board and Bureau Relations. Our email is memberrelations@dca.ca.gov, and we will help you with whatever you may need. A couple training items, unconscious bias training. Our training unit developed a new unconscious bias training specifically for board members. This training is going to be added to your LMS accounts by the end of the month, and it will be incorporated into the onboarding process for all newly appointed members. And you should also be receiving an email soon from Board and Bureau Relations with more information on that. And lastly, for training, our President's Training is scheduled for February 24th, 2026. This is an annual training, and it will be from 10 a.m. to 12:30 p.m. It's a virtual training for board presidents, vice presidents, and advisory committee chairs and vice chairs. The virtual training serves as a forum to share best practices for presiding over board and advisory committees. You can register online through your LMS portal. And if you have any questions or need assistance with the LMS or any of your training information, you can also reach out to us for that. And with that, I want to thank you all for your dedicated service to California and its consumers. And thank you for letting me be here today.
Thank you very much.
Welcome.
Are there any questions from the board members? Any questions in the audience? Any questions from those online?
This is the moderator for members of the public on WebEx. If you would like to make a public comment for agenda item 4A, please click the raise hand icon, or if you're an audio only participant, you can raise your hand by pressing *3 on your device. All right, and it appears there are no requests for public comment at this time.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Shelley. Just a quick note for board members. As Shelley mentioned, Chief Deputy Director Lolly has stepped into her acting role. Around 11 a.m., you may see former Director Kirkmeyer and current acting director Lolly appear in the room. Director Kirkmeyer has a retirement party, I think, in this room in a week or so, and I think they may be scoping it out. So I don't want members to be alarmed that the former director has returned and is executing some sort of oversight responsibilities if you see them in the back of the room.
Thank you for the heads up. Okay, moving on to item B, which is Budget Office Fund Condition. Members today joining us in person are Budget Office representatives Emily and Bradley. Please come on up. Thank you.
And just as they're getting set up, members, I realized as looking through these packets that the printing for the budgetary items got a little messed up. So the physical packets look a little odd, but the electronic versions are all fully captured and accurate.
Good morning. My name is Emily Molino. I'm a budget analyst with the DCA Budget Office. I'm here along with Bradley Lencioni, budget manager. I want to thank the board and executive staff for allowing me to present on agenda item 4BI, the board's expenditure projections and fund condition statement. First, I'm going to start with the board's expenditures, attachment 4BI, page 1 of your materials. These projections are based on actual data through fiscal month 5. The report includes 2024-25 actual expenditures in green, as well as the 2025-26 budgeted and projected expenditures in blue and orange. As we move through the end of the document, you will see the board had a beginning base budget of $3.887 million and is projected to spend a little over $3.3 million, creating a reversion to the board's fund of approximately $543,000 with a reversion percentage of 13.96%. The next document I will be going over is the board's revenue projections, attachment 4BI, page 2 of your materials. This report includes receipts collected through November and is projected revenue to year end. I will go further into the board's collected revenues as we transition to the next slide. The next document is attachment 4BI, page 3 of your materials. This is the board's fund condition statement. As a reminder, we read this document from top to bottom and left to right. The left column is the board's prior year 2024-25 actuals. It shows the board began 2024-25 with a balance of $2.931 million, and the board collected $3.345 million in revenues with $427,000 from initial license fees, $2.596 million from license renewals, and $322,000 collected from the issuance of citations, fines, delinquent fees, and other revenue. For current year 2025-26, the board projects revenues of $3.706 million with $416,000 projected from initial license fees, $2.974 million from renewal fees, and $316,000 from issuance of citations, fines, and delinquent fees and other revenue. The board's 2025-26 expenditures are based on the governor's budget with FM5 projections at $3.644 million between authorized expenditures and direct draws to the fund, leaving the board with a fund balance of approximately $3.135 million or 9.3 months in reserve. The Budget Office will continue to monitor the board's revenue and expenditures and report back to the board with monthly expenditure projections as we move through the current fiscal year. A few things to note about the board's fund condition. The fund condition is a snapshot in time. One of the main factors driving the expenditure increases in future years is a result of personal service adjustments. These include general salary increases as well as employee compensation and retirement rate adjustments. The Budget Office includes a conservative ongoing 3% increase to expenditures on the fund condition statement to account for these ongoing incremental adjustments. You will also notice the revenue is projected static in the out years. I would also like to note to the board that any future legislation or unanticipated events could result in the board's need for additional resources, which would create cost pressure on the fund. Thank you for allowing me the opportunity to present at today's meeting. I'll be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
I have a few questions. Can I proceed?
Absolutely.
Okay. It's only because you can talk a lot faster than I can follow. I'm not used to these documents, so I'm going to bring you back a little bit and have you kind of walk me through it like a child so I can be sure I understand exactly what you're saying. First of all, looking at the first page, agenda item 4B1, you're referencing various monies that look like they're coming in and certain amounts reverted back to the fund, if I understood you correctly. There are many columns. Which column were you referencing for each of those comments on page 1?
So the actual expenditures are going to be in the green. And so I'm referencing all of them. The projected expenditures are going to be in blue and orange in those columns. So then at the end of, you'll see at the end of the document, those are the amounts that I was speaking about. The 3.887 million is the base budget. And then we are projecting to spend a little over 3.3 million. And then that creates that reversion percentage of 13.96%.
All right, so you're talking now about overall totals, 3 up from the bottom, is that right?
That's correct.
Okay, far left in the green, 3.899. That's the total amount of budget that was budgeted? Is that what you're referencing?
The green is going to be our prior year budget. And then
Okay.
the blue, if you look at blue at the bottom, overall net totals, that's our beginning base budget of 3.887.
Okay, at the very bottom now. Okay, because you're jumping around and you lose me. So I want to be sure I can follow entry by entry. So 3.887 overall net total budget. And then where's the reversion number, the amount we got back at the end of the budget?
That's going to be at the bottom of the orange. At the very bottom, you'll see the 542,000 and then the 3.96% at the bottom of that.
It's cut off on the printed copy,
Okay.
but on the electronic, it's there. And just as a clarification, reversion just means money we didn't spend.
Right.
It doesn't mean money we spent and then get reimbursed somehow or come back. It
So we're not-
represents money that was not spent that could have been spent.
I understand. So we don't have like an extra amount in the bank waiting for us, is what you're saying?
Not represented by a reversion number. We
Right.
do have months in reserve that represents money in the bank.
Okay, fair enough. Thank you for that. And then page 2, again, slowly, what does this represent?
Page 2 is going to be our revenue projection. So if you look on the left side, you'll see the budget and the budget revenue. And then if you move all the way over to the right, we're showing the actuals through November. And then December on to June, that's going to be our projected budget. And then projected to year end is going to be on the right side of the document.
Okay, is that year end 2026?
Yes.
Yeah, it'd be our fiscal year would end June 30th of this year, 2026. So this revenue projection chart represents a projection through the remainder of this fiscal year.
All right. And the reimbursements are monies from us that go to DCA, or what does that represent?
Great. Do you want to answer about reimbursements?
I might need your guys', I think these may be reimbursements for like fingerprint reports.
Yep. They're
So-
revenue reimbursed.
So all of our licensees have to be fingerprinted, background checked. And there's a reimbursement schedule because that fee it's a fee we collect, but we don't keep, if it's fair to say it that way. It's DOJ's fee
Okay.
for the fingerprinting.
So is that money that comes through us to them? Is that the idea?
I think that's correct. Yeah.
Okay, all right. So now I understand that. Then on to page 3, we're talking here, it says analysis of fund condition. So it looks like we remain essentially in the black up through BY +2, 2028 to 2029. Am I reading that right?
Yes.
Now, I know we had a document that we were preparing in the past. And that was the document that gave, how can I put this, a more realistic view of what our funds would look like at a certain
Yes.
point in time.
Yes, sir.
Is this that document?
The page 3 document is not that document. This is the official fund condition presented by the department pursuant to the governor's budget. The document that you're talking about is the next document on page 4.
Ah,
It's what we refer to as the mock fund condition.
okay.
Would you like me to explain quickly the difference between the two?
Please.
The difference between what is different on the mock fund condition compared to the official fund condition, if you will, is the mock fund condition uses a slightly higher expenditure growth rate, 5% instead of 3%, and it applies that number to the prior year expenditures. The key difference is that the official fund condition makes an assumption that we will fully expend our appropriation every year. We do not. That's the reversion that we were just talking about. And so if you look at page 3, the official fund condition, it assumes that we're going to be spending $4 million in the next fiscal year, 4.1, 4.2. We don't anticipate that we're going to fully expend our appropriation. We don't have a history of doing that. So the mock fund condition doesn't make that assumption. It, again, uses the prior year actual expenditures as the starting place, puts a 5% growth factor on that to try to capture what we think is a more realistic spending level.
All right, thank you for the clarification. I'm happy to see we seem to be in the black on both. So I will sleep well tonight knowing that. Thank you.
Great.
That's all I had.
I would just also add, just to as a reminder, last fiscal year, which was 24-25, we did have a surplus. I believe it was about $141,000 surplus. So we added money to the bank, if you will. Our fund condition grew, our months in reserve grew as a result of that. As the budget office always does a good job of explaining, this is a snapshot in time and things can change from month to month or event to event. But right now, we are also projecting a small surplus for this current year, $3.7 million in revenue versus $3.644 in expenditure. So that's a slight surplus. Again, snapshot in time, we'll be watching this closely. The fund condition does decline over time under either scenario, whether you're using the official budget office scenario or the mock that we also prepare. It does decline. One of the main reasons for that is, again, these are conservative fund conditions, if I may label them both in that way. We hold revenues constant, so we do not apply any growth factor to the revenue side of either fund condition because we want to be conservative there. All things being equal, you would expect revenues to grow year over year as more licensees and applicants apply. So just a few other comments about the fund condition.
Thank you.
Any other questions from board members?
Sorry to interrupt. This is Member Tedder. You answered my question on that, Greg, so I appreciate that. What do you typically see as the actuals on the expenditure growth year to year? I know you have 3% and then there's an estimate of 5%, but any ballpark on that?
I'd like to come back. It's something I've been looking at. I'd like to come back and try to give you that number for a several year time period. I think for the last fiscal year, it was around 11% actual expenditure growth. However, we had about 20% of revenue growth. So that was reflected in the fact that we had that surplus. You do see that we're spending a few $100,000 more this year compared to last fiscal year. That's partially event driven, and I'll say what some of those events are here shortly, but it's also expected as salaries and benefits go up every year pursuant to the negotiated contracts. That's out of our control, right? But now a few of those event driven items that are like one-time items this fiscal year compared to other fiscal years. Every 5 or so years, the board has to do an occupational analysis of the professions that it regulates. We are 7 years past the date of doing the optometry occupational analysis. We delayed it by a year because we were going through sunset review. So that's an item that is happening right now. We contracted with DCA to pay for that. That represented approximately $70,000 more for that item compared to what we would normally contract with the department for testing activities, broadly speaking. We are also engaged in a project to update our website. That's going to have a cost of somewhere between $30,000 and $40,000. So that's a little more than $100,000 that goes toward a one-time event-driven cost that we didn't have, for example, last year, and we don't have every year. So, there's those factors that come into play, right? I think that's why we need to look at doing that type of analysis to see if there's sort of, what is the average expenditure growth, knowing that, average can be a it maybe doesn't always tell you everything you need to know, right? As a statistical measurement, I still think it's helpful, but the surplus we achieved last year was the first surplus we achieved in, I believe, 5 or 6 fiscal years. So I'd like to try to keep achieving that, but there are one-time and other events that come up that you have to pay for.
Okay, thank you. Final question on the out-year revenue projections being relatively flat. Am I correct in assuming that that's not necessarily driven by projections on licensee either growth or decline? It's more so just a conservative number for the budgeting purposes?
I think that's fair and accurate. Yeah, I don't think that we don't do a licensing application analysis to determine those numbers. I think we just hold them conservative.
Okay, thank you.
Maybe just one more final comment about that. It's also in the context of, I think, that analysis that you're looking for or asking about related to expenditures. I think on the other side, the revenue side, think about our licensure, the cycle, right? It's most of our licenses are 2-year. And up until about 2 or 3 years ago, a lot of folks, when you got licensed, when you applied, and when you got licensed matters, right? In terms of a fiscal year basis. So until 2 or 3 years ago, a lot of our licensees were not getting, they would apply in, say, May, June, when they graduated, which is in the current fiscal year. They'd get licensed after July, which is now in the next fiscal year. 2 years later, that revenue hits on a different fiscal year cycle, if you will, right? Now, the last couple years, most everybody is getting licensed in the same fiscal year that they apply in. So that is going to impact the fiscal year in the out years that the revenue hits, right? It's going to take a little bit of time to kind of smooth that out. You see a lot of historical renewals in August and September because that's when people were getting licensed. Now people are getting licensed in May and June. And so that renewal cycle is in a different fiscal year. So it'll take a little bit of time for that revenue to kind of smooth itself out across the years, I think.
Great questions. Any more questions from the board members? Any questions from the audience? Seeing none. Any questions from those online?
This is the moderator for members of the public on WebEx. If you would like to make a public comment on this item, please click the raise hand icon, or if you're an audio-only participant, you can raise your hand by pressing *3 on your device. All right, and it appears there are no requests for public comment at this time.
Thank you. Thank you, Emily. Thank you, Bradley. Appreciate it. Okay, we're moving on to agenda item number 5, which is discussion and possible action on executive officer's report. EO Pruden.
Thank you, President Garcia. I'm going to start with item 5A, which is our program update. The first item on the program update is something I was just alluding to, which is our optometrist occupational analysis. Want to give an update on that. This was is an activity that we commenced in this current fiscal year, and it's a contract that was executed with the department's Office of Professional Examination Services, who we refer to as OPES. OPES is conducting the occupational analysis study and all of the activities related to this project. Activities to date include 2-day workshops. These are workshops with our board contracted subject matter experts. These are licensed optometrists who are assisting in this work. In January and February, I actually expect it to occur next month in February. There will be a pilot study that's distributed regarding this project. And then in May, the final 2-day workshop will occur. We still expect the final report to be completed around June, July, and we have a July board meeting scheduled where I would anticipate this project being presented. Linked in the materials is the most recent occupational analysis done for the optometry profession, which was back in 2019. So a lot has changed since then, and it'll be exciting to see this project come before the board. We will, in the out years, probably next fiscal year, need to conduct similar studies for our other professions, our opticianry professions, contact lens, spectacle lens, have also are approaching that 5-year cycle. So that will be something that the board will need to engage on soon. Next item that I have for the board is our law and regulations book. I think as some of the members know, this was a book that was recently updated. Well, now maybe not so recently, but in 2024. Before that, it had not been updated for about 5 years, and it was impacting our applicants, especially folks that were candidates for testing who didn't have access to a one place they could go to find all of the laws and regulations that they needed to study. So we executed that contract and updated the book last year. We need to do the same thing following statutes and regulatory changes that occurred in 2025. So staff will be commencing a contract process for that. Don't expect that to cost a lot. Last time it was only a few $1,000s. But we will keep the board updated on our progress on that activity. Really excited to announce this next item, which is our dispensing optician committee. We need to begin a recruitment process for the DOC. As members know, the Sunset Bill SB 776, which took effect at the top of the year, Jan 1, made some consequential changes to the DOC and the makeup of it, reducing the membership from 5 to 3 and giving the board itself the appointing power over those three members. And so we need to begin a recruitment process to attract qualified candidates for this position, for these positions. Of the 3 appointed members of the DOC, 1 member must be a sitting board member who meets the qualifications of the DOC. That can be a public member, that can be a licensed optometrist, or it can be our optician member. So that leaves room for 2 non-board spots. And again, we need to commence a recruitment period. So soon, in the next week or so, the board will have on its website a dedicated page explaining background, history, information about the DOC, its role and purpose within the Board of Optometry, as well as including an application form for interested candidates to fill out and indicate their interest for this committee. We'll be looking forward to distributing this information and working with various partners. I think the outreach on this is going to be important, so I'll be reaching out to folks in the optician world to assist us with that distribution. It's not something that we're going to talk about today, but related to this, the board will need to come up with a process for selection. And so I'm not going to say any more about that today, except to just mention that aspect of this. Once the recruitment is once we have a sufficient number of candidates, there will need to be a board-created process to determine how is that going to be reviewed, approved, selected, and what have you. So more to come on that DOC, but very excited to get this recruitment out there. This committee has not met in about 5.5 years now. We heard a little bit about it earlier from the DCA update on the Los Angeles area wildfire, the fee deferrals. In your packet for this item is a little bit of background and information about how this impacted the board. We had estimated when we brought this to the board last year that there was going to be about 100 licenses and registrations that could be impacted by this deferral, and that those fees would have to be collected at a later date. As you heard earlier today, those notices and fees are now due and need to be collected, and DCA is assisting the boards and the bureaus with this process by sending out monthly notices to those impacted licensees and registrants. It turned out we didn't have 100. We had about 31. It was the latest number that I have, 31 licenses and registrants that were impacted by the fee deferral, and will need to start paying those deferred fees. The fees were deferred for licensees expiring or renewing between January and July, I believe it was. So those notices are coming out, and we'll keep the board up to date on progress there. A staffing update. Some of you have met, I know we introduced virtually, but she hadn't started yet at our October meeting, but the board did hire a new policy analyst, Serena St. Mary, and she's here in the room with us today. So we're very excited to have that position filled, and she's hit the ground running. And we're excited for all of that work. As well, we are in the middle of recruiting for our receptionist position, which has been vacant for a few months now. We have recently completed candidate interviews, and we'll be looking forward to making a selection there and introducing that candidate to the board at a future meeting. We also did have and had notified the board about a recruitment of our administrative analyst position, but we've paused that at the moment to do a review of that position's duty statement. And we'll come back to the board at a future meeting with updates on that position, as well as the receptionist position. Included related to this update is the current organizational chart. So feel free to look that over. The last update I have for 5A program update is just our publications and communications. Our winter newsletter has been submitted to DCA. I expect it to come out in February. So we're looking forward to releasing that item. I'm also going to be traveling next month to San Diego to the California Optometric Association House of Delegates meeting. So I'm looking forward to that annual meeting. And that's the update that I have for the board on item 5A. Any questions or comments? Member Clemens.
Couple questions, perhaps ministerially, in the discussion of the wildfire fee deferral. There's specific reference in the second to last bullet of a code. I'm just wondering if it's not referenced anywhere else. Should that be in our minutes? Is that something people can plug in to avoid codes or avoid payments, or is that some?
It's an internal code that was automatically placed on all licensees and registrants with the zip code in the affected area to sort of tag them, if you will, so we knew who they were. And it's just a notification that that'll be removed once the payment is received.
As long as it's not a discount code that suddenly everybody can use. That's great.
Yeah,
It does. Currently using it to buy things on Temu. So the other question I have is a bit more, hopefully practical. Great news about the DOC committee. Finally, I know that's been a burr under several people's saddles for a long time. I worry because there are a variety of us who will probably engage in the recruitment process and try to cast a wide net and find things. And then we have to develop a process for how we're choosing someone, et cetera. This does seem to me to be the sort of thing that can fall victim to timeliness, just because the sky's the limit and we're setting our own processes. I'd feel very I'd like us to decide by when we want to have this group seated and work a timeline back from that. I don't know what the appropriate number of months are that we should choose, but I think it would be helpful to us to decide what that is and then agree upon how long we are going to search for good candidates. And during that time, we can work at the same time to decide what our process is going to be to figure those folks out. I just worry that if we don't actually decide those timelines, we will fall victim to the calendar eating our heads. I don't have a perspective on what those timelines should be. I'd just like us to do that if that's possible. Thanks.
Yeah, I think you're right on. It's something that council and I have talked about a lot of what you were just mentioning. I think we anticipate our next regular scheduled meeting is April. And I think this needs to be a dedicated item on that agenda to do all those things that you just mentioned. And my goal would be to have this committee meet this calendar year. So I agree with you. I think working backward from there makes sense, and then setting up those processes. I think we just have to have it as a dedicated agenda item in order to effectuate that. I think, is that correct, council? Yeah.
Can we have that placed on? I'd like to request that we place that on for our next meeting. And to have them meet this calendar year seems obvious to me. I would love. It hasn't met for 5 years. Are we allowed to start recruitment now? So perhaps there will be a group of 5 or 15 people who are eager to put their names up for this, or?
I'm just waiting for the website edits that we've requested to be officially implemented, and I anticipate that happening in a matter of days. We just need to get that up on the website. It's been requested, it's in process, and then, yeah, the recruitment starts. I'm going to make a note. I think just to be official and proper, we need to just come back at future agenda items, number 9 or number 8, and just officialize that. So I'll just make a note of that number 9 is future agenda items for when we get there.
Any other board member comments? Seeing none. Any comments from the audience on 5A? Any comments, questions from those online?
This is the moderator for members of the public on WebEx. If you would like to make a public comment on this item, please click the raise hand icon, or if you're an audio-only participant, you can raise your hand by pressing *3 on your device. All right, and it appears there are no requests for public comment at this time.
Thank you. We'll move on to agenda item number 5B, enforcement program. Brad, all yours.
All right, thank you, board. Appreciate being able to present to you again. It's an honor and a privilege to be in front of you today. So for our enforcement program, for the tour, I'll just basically give an overview of the statistics and what they're showing us, kind of where we're at as far as direction of what we're wanting to do. For the Q2 statistics, the overall number of cases is tracking at a similar pace as what the last quarter did. We have received 134 complaints total, 100 for optometry and 32 for optician. I see that math is off. 132, I believe, is the right one. You can check the tables in the following pages that will show the exact numbers. We're continuing to focus on unlicensed practice, unlicensed activity, and trying to get people licensed who are qualified to, and also to have people stop practicing when they're not authorized. So we have a full staff of our analysts, and we're continuing to prioritize our cases based on the DCA complaint prioritization and referral guidelines. If you follow that link, it goes to a DOI, the Division of Investigation guideline for how they would work cases for us if we needed an investigator. So we follow the same process. Our more urgent priority, that cases that involve patient harm, direct consumer harm, like if we have a doctor that has injured a patient, we get a settlement report, that kind of thing. We prioritize that case to be worked first. There's more of an imminent threat to the public on those. We also get arrest reports. Sometimes we get ones where it involves sexual abuse or those types of things. We'll also prioritize those and get those moving. That'll be our first thing. As far as sending cases to the Division of Investigation, where they have an investigator go out and investigate a location, the guidelines are kind of limited. A lot of what they want us to do is most of our cases we'll work ourselves because they just don't meet the threshold. A lot of theirs that, according to the guidelines, there should be immediate patient harm, death. We rarely ever see anything with death with our cases, fortunately. So that's kind of where we're at. Patient harm comes first. Our applicant cases also come pretty close to first because we want to be able to get them licensed if their convictions don't meet the requirements for denial. So we want to work those cases as basically in terms of severity or directed at getting people licensed or not licensed. For the quarter, the board issued 17 citations, 16 optometry and 1 opticianry. This, for the optometry citations, these track pretty closely with our CE audits, since that's the lion's share of our citations is CE audit failures. So for quarter one, we had 50 audits, and for quarter two, we only had 26. And that was because our staff wasn't as available during the holiday season to do those audits. But we still issued 16 citations, whereas in the quarter one, we issued 22. Now for the CE audits, pass and failure, we were tracking at about roughly the same rate as the last quarter, about 62%. Same as last quarter. Okay. So the board currently has 15 cases pending at the Attorney General's office, 9 for optometrists and 6 for opticianry. And those are moving as normal. But you can see all of these in the tables following the agenda item cover sheet. I'd like to, one last thing. For our probationers, we've got a total of 6 licensees that are on probation, 5 optometrists and 1 optician. With that, I don't have any other major things to report. I'd like to open it up if anybody has any questions about the statistics or about what I've said. Please.
Yeah, board members, please ask questions.
Hi, Member Kleppa. Couple questions, if you don't mind. I know you were reading off the text version. I was kind of looking through the statistical charts as you were. So I was trying to match up what you were saying with what I was seeing. So
Sure.
a couple questions. I wanted just to be sure I understand. So let's do the one that I don't know if you mentioned, and then we'll talk about the ones that you did. Regarding target dates, there are target dates for a lot of the pending violations, which I'm happy to see. For instance, the first page is a statistical report at the bottom. Target date for intake, 7 days. Intake average, I guess, is 2, right? So
That's correct.
So you're ahead of the target, which is wonderful.
Yes.
I just want to be sure I'm reading it right. Now, if you go on the page 2 of the statistics, talks about investigations target 90 days, and the average cycle was 68. So you're ahead of the game there, which is a good thing. That's at the very top of page 2 of the chart section.
Is that the PM3 cycle time?
PM3 cycle time, exactly correct. So I'm seeing a 68 average cycle time, target 90 days. So you're ahead of the mark there. You with me?
I believe.
Page 2 of the statistics, PM3 cycle time. They aren't page numbered, so I can't give you any other thing. It's under optometry program.
Yes.
You with me? Okay, good. My question is third section down under citations, under PM3 cycle time. It says final citations 53, average data close 33. My question is your target still 90 days for the citations?
There is not a target for that category.
Okay, is that something we can develop?
We
I'd like,
could,
because it's a rubric that helps us be sure that you're doing exactly what I know you're trying to do.
yeah, there's a lot of variances with our cases. Like for CE audit failures, those can happen a lot quicker.
Mhm.
If there's a advertising case or something like that, those can take longer just because there's a lot of communication back and forth with the licensee typically. So setting a target is kind of a difficult thing to do. We can work on that based on like category of complaint, like what kind of complaint it is, what are the violations. But that's I mean there's probably not a good way to do it for all different types of citations.
Okay, if you have to break it down into subcategories, I understand. Just something I'd like you to chew on a little bit,
Sure.
because as an oversight board member, I look at, the overall achievement. And so far, you're meeting all your targets, which is wonderful to see.
Yeah.
The more targets you have, the more I'm reassured we're doing what we need to do.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, so I'd appreciate if you took a look at that for me. Thank you. Transmittals to attorney, you've got your target of 540, you're at 360, you're meeting the targets there. So the ones that I've seen where you have targets, you're meeting them all, which is very reassuring. So I'm happy to see that.
And I can tell you, it hasn't been that way in years past, so we're all.
I do
very happy.
understand.
Yeah.
Our executive director has mentioned there was a lot of catching up to do. So I'm glad you and your staff have been able to achieve those ends. That's much appreciated.
Thank you.
I have a similar question for the opticianary, I'm going to get that right one of these days, opticianary program. Also for the citations, I don't see a target for that. Your target for the investigations, 90 days, you're at 88, so you're still on target there. 3 boxes down under citations, no target. There might be a similar concern about setting an effective target, but it looks like it's 532 days to close. That seems kind of a lot. Are you with me on the same page? It's the statistics report, opticianary program, second page, 3rd box down from the top, citations.
Yeah, yes, yeah, you're looking at the 2024-25 fiscal year.
Yeah, exactly correct. And I know that it has improved since then. 358, 264, I see that. But I don't see a target there, and I know it may have the same challenges you mentioned earlier, but I'd like you to chew on that for me and see if you can come up with one so we have a better ability to do our oversight duties.
Excellent.
Okay?
Yeah, and this is a good example of what I was saying for these optician ones. The one for Q2 of this fiscal year is 264 days.
Yeah.
And if you look at the other ones for optometry, we issued 16 and they had an average days to close of 72 days.
Right.
So that's
I do see
nearly
that.
200-day difference.
Oh, yeah, and quite a difference. I appreciate that. So this is not an attempted criticism. That's not what I'm doing here. I'm simply asking if you can create a rubric, a yardstick that would help us better understand what you're doing in the time frame in which you're doing it.
Sure. Yeah, we can work on something like
I
that.
appreciate that.
I just want to chime in real quick on this. I think it's certainly something we can look at and we will look at. I don't know if we'll be able to achieve that. And I want to try to say a little bit about why. Not all citations are the same. And the abatement orders that are included in citations are specific to each individual citation. So what a certain individual may be cited for and what their abatement order may require them to do certain things over a longer time period to comply with that citation compared to another citation. And so part of the reason why part of the explanation for why there will be longer days on citations is specific to that abatement process. The citation isn't closed until the abatement has been completed. So somebody, for example, in a CE citation case who did no CE and now has to do 50 hours, we're going to give them more than a month to do that. We might give them, 3 months, 4 months. That increases the clock, right, for the citation. So I just think that information may be helpful for you all as board members to understand that, citations are really apples to oranges. Even a CE citation, right? Somebody who was cited for doing no CE versus somebody who has 5 hours that they missed and have to make up, right? The 5-hour person is probably going to get a month to do that versus somebody else who may have several months to accomplish it. So I just think that might be helpful as we're considering how a target could be achieved.
Right. And I do understand there are concerns and there are variables. And that's why I want to give staff a chance to think about it and think, are there categories we can create that would allow some sort of target to be inserted? Maybe we have to have multiple categories. I don't know. I'm going to defer to the experts on that. I simply want to have your input if I can.
Absolutely. I appreciate that. We can work on that.
And on the other items, again, I was looking at the statistics versus what you were looking at. So I assume everything you indicated in your testimony is all in the statistical reports, right?
Yes, they are.
Okay, so I won't belabor the point. You've already mentioned it. So thank you for your response.
Thank you.
Any other board member comments, questions? Seeing none, anything from anyone from the audience? Anyone online?
This is the moderator for members of the public on WebEx. If you would like to make a public comment on this item, please click the raise hand icon, or if you're an audio-only participant, you can raise your hand by pressing *3 on your device. All right, and it appears there are no requests for public comment at this time.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thank you,
Board.
Brad. Great work. Thank you. Okay, moving on to item 5C, examination and licensing programs. We have Erica.
Good morning, board members.
Good morning.
Thanks for having me. I am going to give you an update on Breeze, and you all have seen the update in your packet, so I'm just going to give a brief update. So in the fall, following the conclusion of the legislative session, most Breeze resources DCA-wide are deployed to assist programs with implementation of statutory and other requirements, which often take effect January 1 of each year. So our recent updates between October and December of 2025, the non-resident ophthalmic lens dispenser, NLD transactions, new applicants should be able to submit and pay all fees in a new single application and should no longer have to submit 2 applications to complete the NOLD application. The board has now completed its project to combine initial application and registration transactions across all optometry registration types. Removed MOVE governing rule limiting permits to 12 during first licensure cycle. Prior to SB 776 taking effect on January 1 of 2026, a MOVE owner and operator could only have up to 12 permits during the first licensure period. A MOVE operator can now apply for unlimited permits, and the annual report must be submitted by January 1 of each year. And the third update is the applicant and licensee email requirement. SB 776 all requires applicants and registrants to provide an email address at the time of application and renewal. So those are the ones that we just completed, and these are our future updates. An optometrist can have an unlimited number of statement of licensures for practice locations that are not their address of record and that they do not own. The law limits an optometrist to owning no more than 11 offices. If an OD has more than 11 SOLs, they are not able to renew the additional SOLs. We are asking to update to allow renewing additional SOLs beyond 11.
Can I just chime in real quick on this one? So this is kind of like an inside baseball one, if you will, for us, although it is impacting certain licensees, a small segment of licensees that have this mixture of owning and working at locations that are at a number greater than 11. So this was identified to us by a few licensees that we're trying to renew, and we were not able to get the fix in on the January release, but we do anticipate it'll come into February. So we have been working with these licensees. We're aware of the issue. Like I said, it's kind of an inside baseball situation, but it is being fixed. Keep going, Erica, sorry.
Okay, that's okay. So our next update for future is an optometrist advertising under a fictitious name is required to obtain a fictitious name permit. Presently, the Breeze system has a governing rule preventing staff from applying the application if the organizational type is not a partnership. A future Breeze update will allow staff to process these applications without making manual adjustments to the organizational type. So that's all that I have for the Breeze updates. Did you want to say?
I was going to chime in on that one. This actually goes back to branch office. And this has been a situation that I think has existed on the FMP, the way that we as staff process the FMPs again, going back to the branch office change, which I think was 2018, 2019, when branch office, which limited you to 2 offices and you had to be 50% in each one. Therefore, you could only really have 2 offices. That was done away with, and now you can have 11. Corresponding changes weren't made to the FNP application on Breeze. So no applicant is aware of this issue. It doesn't impact them. What it does is it creates more work for staff to have to click about 5 or 6 extra times to delete the partnership, delete the corporation, which is the entity type that the applicant applied under, replace it with partnership, approve the application, go back into the license and switch it back from partnership to corporation. So it's invisible to our licensees and applicants, creates more work for us. So the benefit of this change will be just having to do less staff work. This is something that, just as another good example of how Breeze changes work, I've known about this issue for probably a year or so, but again, it hasn't impacted licensees. We just manually work around it. You're limited every month in how many changes you can make on Breeze. And so you have to make the higher priority ones first, right? And this one just kept getting pushed down. So we're finally at a place now where we can make that change. And I know the main staff person who's involved in these applications is going to love this change because it's very frustrating having to manually click all these extra times.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So now we'll move on to statistical review for quarter 2. For quarter 2, fiscal year 2025, the board approved 22 requests for verification letters, 10 applications for retired status, and 2 for retired volunteer status. We have attachments 5CI, which is a statistical review of the second quarter of the current fiscal year. Attachment A shows the number of applications received and approved by type. Attachment B shows the total number of licensees by license type and license status. And attachment C contains graphs that illustrate the number of applications processed among the average processing time. So if you had any questions about that, I'm sure Gregory can help me out.
Absolutely. I just wanted to point out, first of all, good job, Erica, and thank you for that. I just wanted to point out on attachment A, I'd love to get the members' feelings about what attachment A is becoming. What we're trying to do in attachment A is show a quarter-over-quarter variance, right, or difference. What did we get in the same quarter last year versus this year? I'm envisioning this chart kind of getting almost unwieldy, if you will, right? I mean, look at it. We're only 2 quarters in, and there's a lot of numbers and percentages, and I'm envisioning this starting to become maybe a little complicated and convoluted. I don't know if members have thought about this aspect of it or looked at it. What I'm trying to achieve with this is going back to what we were talking about on the fund condition and revenue, knowing that things have changed over time in terms of when applicants and licensees are applying and being licensed, trying to figure out what those patterns are, right? If we're on a 2-year cycle, is it the fiscal year that ends in an even number or an odd number that we see more of our applicants and licensees in, if you will, right? Is there a split between the fiscal years within a licensure cycle, if that makes sense? Or is it even? Or are things shifting around? Again, going back to that optometry example, where folks were applying in May and June, getting licensed 3-4 months later in a different fiscal year, and then that starts a different sort of renewal clock. So, you look at some of these percentage numbers and year-over-year change, some of them jump out at you and they look kind of scary in some places, right? Oh, wow, 15% less optometry exams, for example. Why is that happening? What do you think? It's only 2 quarters worth of data, right? And I think more of our applicants, for example, on the exam side of this, are starting to come in now because they're getting closer to graduation. But I don't know. I just am envisioning this chart as we fill in quarter 3 and quarter 4, starting to get the text is already very tiny. how much tinier can it get as we put more numbers on? So I don't know if members have comments about it. It was just something that I was feeling and thinking about as we were putting together the data.
Comments?
Oh, go ahead.
Yes, thank you for bringing that up. I think that this would benefit from staff going through it and doing a first analysis of what seems to be a dramatic change and what seems to not. Perhaps putting everything that's not on page 2 and highlighting the 3 or 4 or 5 places where these trends don't seem to be correct. Also, I think that we should check our underlying formulas because I don't believe the math is correct throughout all of them. If you head down to non-resident ophthalmic lens dispenser license and renewal, you have impossible decreases of 125 and 800%. I know that there's a current significant elected official in the United States of America who likes to explain that prices have gone down by 600%. And I never passed any of my math classes, but I know that that's not possible. So perhaps the math could be checked first, but I think this is having all the information is great for we board members, but doing a highlight of what staff feels is out of whack would be helpful in the winnowing process.
I appreciate that.
Thank you. Other comments?
Yeah, Member Kleppa, I support Member Clement's position. I also had those percentages, as pointed out by the executive director, jump out at me. 16% dropped optometrist exam, 30% dropped approval. These are big numbers. But as the executive director pointed out, they're not necessarily useful numbers because they don't show enough data to make it relevant to us. So a little more analysis of what we need to know would be useful. So if we somehow can do a comparison between what the total numbers were last year versus where we should be this year, because we're likely seeing the same numbers of persons respond at that point, that would be useful. But if the data set is too small to make it useful, I think it would just cause excess heartburn for people like me to see these statistics jump out and then later be told, just kidding, they don't really mean much. So I agree with Member Clement and the executive director. Did have a couple questions. If I might move on just for a second. I did note in the presentation, applicant and licensee email requirement is now in effect.
Yes.
Are we receiving those in significant numbers?
So the way it is, the way the language was in, the statutory language is that it must be provided at the time of initial licensure or upon renewal. So the business change was to, the email was already asked in both of those applications, but the law did not allow us to require it. So we just did a business rule change to now essentially put an asterisk next to that dialog box, and you cannot proceed with your application unless you've submitted the email address. So we are receiving them. Like I said, you cannot, we've had a few folks who have, F&Ps are all due at the end of the month, for example. And so a lot of people are renewing their fictitious name permits, and you have to give us an email address on the renewal. I've had a few people either call or email in, hey, I'm stuck, this system's not working. You didn't put your email in, and that's why it's not letting you move forward. So we are collecting those. We are receiving those.
Oh, that's good news. Are we now putting them into a database to disperse all our announcements and such?
The staff process regarding that will be on a monthly basis to upload them, take them from Breeze and upload them to our listserv system. I'm hopeful that in the future we may have more to report on there. I do think that there's going to be some listserv changes that may make it more easy for us to, the two systems don't talk to each other, listserv and Breeze. They don't have an interface. So it's a download from Breeze and an upload to listserv. And we've already been doing that on a monthly basis pursuant to a consumer relations committee meeting that we had last year. The difference again was we didn't have legal authority to require the email address. So we had a lot of emails, of course, in our database, but we didn't have the full universe, and hard to know, if you put that email in 10 years ago when you were licensed, is it still the one you're using today, right? So now you have to put it in upon licensure and renewal, so we're getting more accurate data there.
Okay, as I'm sure you know, automation would really help here. Is there any way to connect the two databases, or does it have to be done manually?
I mean, connecting Breeze to anything that's outside is, I think, challenging. I don't believe there's any functionality currently to do that. I do understand that I think there's going to be some listserv as a service. I think there are some changes happening there that may make it perhaps more useful for boards, but I don't know all the information about it at this time.
Okay, well, I remain hopeful that that comes down the road at some point, save a
Yeah.
lot of trouble and time.
Yeah, I
Okay.
mean, having the email addresses presents a lot of future opportunity to look at things like, should we still send paper renewal notices, for example? That is something that we do 97 days in advance of every expiration date. The renewal application is opened on Breeze and distributed to the address of record. If you now have emails, you have options, right? You can stop sending the mail and just send an email. You can do both. So that's something that is being looked at, is what are the costs of the things that we are mailing out, and whether it might make sense to just use email instead.
Okay, thank you.
Any other board member comments?
This is Member Tedder. As a licensee who recently had to renew their license, the email hard stop, I can assure you, works exceptionally well. And it resulted in an email to Greg. My question is, you mentioned something earlier about Breeze, and can you speak a little bit about the limitation of fixes in the system? I think you mentioned one per month, and is that included in the cost that I'm sure the board pays for Breeze? Can you speak a little bit more about that and that limitation?
Yeah, just from a high level of perspective, the types of changes that you make on Breeze get put in a category. So for example, if we want to make a change to the renewal letter, that's under correspondence, right? Letters are considered correspondence. So each month you have, I think it's three to five changes that you can request to be made for each category. Categories like correspondence, business interface, there's a few others. It doesn't mean that you're going to get all of those changes done for a variety of reasons. Your own internal staff resources, the Breeze team resources. We are part of a pod. So the way that Breeze resources or work is organized is in a pod system. We're in what's called Pod A with a few other programs, and we share the Breeze staff resources across that pod. And so each program has the same limitations every month. The only exceptions to that are, as Erica was mentioning, October to December is reserved just for statutory requirements that have to be implemented on Jan 1. So really it's January through September that you have the ability to make these changes in each category every month. I think this could perhaps be a good future agenda item to more fully sort of explain all of the inner workings, if you will, of how that works, like our staff process, how we sort of determine what we want to get done this month, there's what's called a grooming session where you work. I recognize maybe the optics of that word, but what happens in that session, you essentially are working out any of the kinks that might exist in that business process. The statement of licensure that we were talking about earlier, for example, was a very unique situation, right? Because the law says you can have, meaning own 11 offices, but we know that ODs can work at as many as they want. And so we had to do some testing, right? To figure out, okay, how does somebody who's trying to renew something that they once owned and now doesn't own, how does the system treat that versus somebody who's trying to renew something that they own and still own, right? So there's always scenarios that you have to work through. The testing There's two sides to Breeze, of course. There's the side that applicants use and the side that staff uses. So the testing sometimes has to be on one side or the other, or both sides, depending on what you're trying to change. So we can come back at a future board meeting and like really explain that if that would be helpful to the board about more detail about those processes. But we are constantly as staff looking at what makes sense, what doesn't make sense in our processes. We are also have these things identified to us by applicants and licensees sometimes when things break or don't work any longer. And then we submit a ticket to the system, and then off we go in terms of working it up. So hopefully that answered the question.
That's helpful. And, I think you guys are doing a great job from my perspective. From the time that we first started with Breeze until now, I've seen a lot of improvements. And so I think I wouldn't recommend a change in the process. I think you guys are doing a great job. The question was more so to Member Kleppa's point about integrating the two systems and not knowing anything about the process now. Is there an opportunity to save up our monthly requests, if you will, and have one big request and get that project done? Because it sounds like there could be a lot of benefit to staff to get that integration completed. That's it. Thank you.
Yes, member.
Hi, Member Kleppa. Just one last question. I just noticed, it looks like the last chart for
Yeah.
5C, it's the number of people who passed the exam to become licensees. If I'm reading this correct, it says exam statistics. If
Yeah.
we're all on the same page. My question is this: obviously, I'm not a professional in the field. I don't know how strict the exam is or what we're looking for. Is the failure rate that I'm seeing on these statistics the general nationwide average, or are we stricter or less strict than other states?
I could not answer that question with I have no knowledge about that. I don't know whether every state has its own state law exam, for example. And if they do, it's their own state law exam testing to their own state requirements, which would in most cases be different than ours. So I don't know that answer at all. I can tell you that this is a passing rate that has gone up in recent years. And just a year or two ago, it was in the low 80s. It was like 81%. Last year, I think overall as a fiscal year, we finished around 89, 90%. And you see that what the numbers are so far through two quarters, fairly consistent. But yeah, I just don't know the answer to that question about what other states. And Lillian, I don't know if you have a perspective as an educator member of
So
the
not
national
all,
board.
so not all states have a law exam, and some of them are open book. And so ours, you actually have to go to a test center to take the CLRE, but there's other states that you just do it at home online on your computer, and it can be open book. So I think the pass rate, I don't think there's an exact way to do a direct comparison, because it just depends on what kind of tests each state offers.
Okay. Well, if they do open book, ours is obviously stricter than that.
Yeah.
Because you actually have to know this stuff better. So I was just trying to get a feel for whether this represents an effective evaluation of the subject. Apparently it does, given nationwide, right, rubrics. So.
Yeah, and I don't know, as Lillian just said, every state, not every state has it, their own state exam. Those that do may have open book or other methods of taking it or completing it. Our exam is created by subject matter licensees. So I don't know, again, have other states have a process like that or not. My suspicion is no, from the conversations that I've had with fellow executive officers around the country, that I think California may be quite unique in the way that we contract with, again, subject matter licensed optometrists who write the exam questions, write the answers to those exam questions. They perform that work. I think California may be unique in that perspective. And what it really does is it gives the board defensibility on our exam process, that it's valid, that it's statistically sound, that there's no opportunity for malfeasance or anything like that, that the board has a distance from it by executing these contracts with with the SMEs and OPES that perform all that work. And OPES those are statisticians. Those are, I mean, that's what they do, is create tests and design them. So I feel it's a really robust and sound process. I know we've had a lot of conversation about just the overall pass rate. There had been a history of it declining. You know, why is that happening, right? There's also declines in the national board exams, and there's been a lot of conversation nationally as well about that. But I think from a California perspective, our CLRE is a pretty airtight process.
Thank you.
Any other board member questions? Seeing none, any questions from the audience? Seeing none, any questions for those online? Examination licensing programs.
This is the moderator for members of the public on WebEx. If you would like to make a public comment on this item, please click the raise hand icon, or if you're an audio only participant, you can raise your hand by pressing *3 on your device. All right, and it appears there are no requests for public comment at this time.
Thank you, moderator. Erica, thank you very much. Great job. Okay, we're going to move on to item 5D, regulatory update, EO Prudent.
Thank you, President Garcia. Yeah, agenda item 5D, regulatory update. Just not much update to provide here, except to say that these are the still existing 4 packages that have been previously board approved that are still in various stages of process and need to get brought across the finish line. The good news is that we now have a policy analyst hired in that role to assist me in this work. And so we look forward to bringing these items to the board in the future, but I don't have any other specific updates on these 4 items at the time. Happy to take questions, however.
I have to ask, do we
Yes.
have, I understand that we have someone working on it. Do we have a time frame in mind, within the year, within 2 years? What are you thinking?
The items, all 4 of these are priority because the board has said they're priority. So want that to be clear. But of the 4, the 2 that I think are more important to get done sooner rather than later are the disciplinary guidelines. As this board knows, there are no official disciplinary guidelines in place for opticianry. There never have been. And the optometry ones are 7 years old, maybe 8 years old. So they need to be, those need to be updated, and then opticianry needs to be implemented. So, you know, we do expect to bring those forward at a future board meeting this year. I don't have a specific meeting in mind, but we do recognize and totally understand the importance of all 4 of these items, but especially those 2. So.
Okay, thank you.
Any other board member questions? Yes.
May I ask if number 3 is going to be independent of the establishment of the DOC, or is that something that we're waiting for?
Well, it doesn't have to go back before the DOC. In fact, that's a great question, Member Dawson, because how did the disciplinary guidelines for opticianry even make it to the board and get approved and put on this list? The DOC did all of that work back in 2017, 18, and 19 before it stopped meeting. So the disciplinary guidelines for opticianry came directly out of that DOC process. They don't need to go back before the DOC and start all over unless that's what the board wants to happen.
Any other board member questions? Any questions from the audience? Seeing none, any questions for those online?
This is the
5D.
This is the moderator for members of the public on WebEx. If you would like to make a public comment on this item, please click that raised hand icon, or if you're an audio only participant, you can raise your hand by pressing *3 on your device. All right, and it appears there are no requests for public comment at this time.
Thank you. Yeah, we're right on time. So we now are at 10:30. We have a staff 15-minute break. So we will reconvene at 10:45. Is that okay? All right.
Very good.
Break. Okay, moving on, we're going to go into agenda item number 6, possible and possible action on California State Board of Optometry 26 through 29 strategic plan. EO Pruden.
Thank you, Board President Garcia. Yes, this is our draft 2026-2029 strategic plan. Just as an overview, at our last board meeting in October of 2025, we participated in a strategic planning session facilitated by the Department of Consumer Affairs and the Solid Strategic Planning team. During that session, we reviewed our mission, vision, values, and goals. We reviewed the environmental scan results of the survey that was sent out, and we established objectives. Following that planning session, staff met with the Solid team and assisted in the drafting of the strategic plan that is in front of you today. It is being presented for discussion and possible action, so we will need a motion on it. In the board packet are draft language for that motion, but perhaps before we get there, I don't want to get in front of myself and assume it will be adopted. Would like to take questions from any members or comment from any members. Certainly want to make sure that the objectives that are in each goal area represent what we discussed at that planning session in October. And then before I turn it over to any comment or questions or clarifications from the members, just will say a quick word about what would happen following adoption today. If the strategic plan is adopted today, staff, including myself, will meet with the Solid planning team and begin to put action items to each of the objectives. Those action items, once developed, will come back before the board for your review and approval. And then at every quarterly board meeting thereafter, progress is presented toward those goals and action items that the board has established and approved. Personally, I'm really looking forward to that process because admittedly, it's always difficult when you come in midstream to an existing strat plan, and most of you here had nothing to do with that last strat plan that was adopted. And so this really feels like our strat plan and something that I'm really excited to put arms around and begin tackling and reporting that progress to you all at future quarterly meetings. So, excuse me, with that, want to turn it over to any member comments or questions about what is contained in the 26-29 draft strategic plan. Oh, everybody loves it. If there are no changes, then I would certainly entertain a motion.
I'll make the motion. I move to approve the draft strategic plan as provided in the materials and direct staff to finalize the strategic plan for publishing on the board website. In finalizing the strategic plan, the board authorizes the executive officer to make any technical or non-substantive changes.
Thank you, Dr. Wong. Do we have a second?
Second.
I have a first and a second. Open it up for public comment. Anyone in the room would like to comment? Anyone online would like to comment?
This is the moderator for members of the public on WebEx. If you would like to make a public comment on this item, please click the raise hand icon, or if you're an audio only participant, you can raise your hand by pressing *3 on your device. All right, and it appears there are no requests for public comment at this time.
Thank you. Member Bragg, if we can have a roll call vote.
Member Clemens,
Aye.
Member Dawson, Member Sue,
Aye.
Member Kleppa,
Aye.
Dr. Pruitt,
Aye.
Dr. Tedder,
Aye.
Dr. Wong,
Aye.
Dr. Bragg, aye. Vice President Linden,
Aye.
President Garcia.
Aye, would I? Okay, motion passes. Thank you.
Just for the record, who was second on that?
Clemens.
Okay, Clemens was, okay. Thank you.
Okay, moving on. We're going to go to action item number 7, discussion and possible action on and to initiate section 100 rulemakings. EO Pruden.
Yes, thank you, President Garcia. So at our last meeting in October 25, we provided some information to the board about several implementation items related to our sunset review. There's a hyperlink in the electronic materials to take you back to that update from last October. But what we have before us are several Section 100 regulatory changes that we need to make. I wanted to say a few comments quickly about what a Section 100 change is, and then we'll talk with you all about what the specific regulatory changes are. Technically, a Section 100 change is a regulatory change that is considered to be without regulatory effect. So these are for more technical or non-substantive items, or to deal with regulations that no longer have the support of a statutory law. Section 100s do not have to come before the board. I have delegated authority to already initiate a rulemaking process working with regulatory counsel on Section 100s. But I feel that because this is, it is technically making regulatory changes, I felt that we should bring this before the board for official approval and more importantly than the approval, for your notification. Some of these items are related to our sunset review that just occurred. Some of these are items that were discovered during that sunset review that should have been taken care of in prior sunset reviews. And so just in that spirit of communication and transparency, that's why these items are being included. So with that introduction, I will just jump into the specific items. The very first one is a repeal of foreign graduate sponsorship. This goes back almost 9 years ago now, when the legislature repealed the section of statutory code that authorized the board to issue letters of standing to foreign optometry school graduates. This was a process that they needed so that they could sit for the National Board of Examiners exam. Part of the problem was that even though the board could give that authorization, other statutory law that stakeholders could not find agreement on to shift required that they graduate from an accredited school of optometry. And these foreign schools are not accredited. And so while they could still sit for the exam, there wasn't an actual pathway for licensure. This was discussed in prior sunset reviews by the board, and ultimately the legislature repealed the code section that provided for this process. For 9 years, however, the regulation has still existed on the books, and it's confusing to applicants. Every year we get a handful of folks that will contact the board and say, hey, what's the process for foreign sponsorship? I'm a graduate from such and such country. In those situations, what we do is we inform the applicant licensee that unfortunately we don't have this process anymore because the law has changed, but we are aware that there are approximately half a dozen, maybe a number slightly higher than that, of accredited optometry programs around the country that have what are called advanced standing programs. I believe Western University, for example, down south in California has one. There are several others across the country. So we do try to help the applicant and point them in that direction, but we need to repeal this regulation for clarity purposes. So the first Section 100 rulemaking is to repeal that section of regulatory text, which is in Section 1530.1. Are there any questions about the first one? Okay. The second Section 100 is a repeal of corporation applications and branch office licenses. Going back even further than 9 years ago, law was chaptered and signed by the governor that repealed a few different statutory code sections, which until their repeal had required the board to approve via application optometric corporations. As you can see in your packet, we provided some history about the issue and why this was changed. The Board of Optometry itself actually sponsored this statutory change following two other programs in the department. I believe dentistry was one of them, and psychology was the other, who had similarly in years prior to our effort repealed this corporate application process. While the statute was implemented, again, the regulatory code sections were not repealed, and so they still exist on the books. There's no applicant confusion about any of this, but we just don't think it should be there since the statute no longer supports it. Similarly, with branch offices, as was mentioned a little bit earlier in the meeting today, branch offices was a historic license type that we had for an optometrist that had more than one location, but no more than two. And there was a requirement of some reporting on those branch offices. Branch offices went away. There is no branch office license type, and so this section of regulatory law is also obsolete and needs to be removed. And so that's the other change in item B. Any questions about this change? Seeing none, I'll move on to number C. This is letter C, National Board of Examiners in Optometry Part 3 examination change. Recently, the NBEO changed the name of their Part 3 exam. And the old name of that exam existed in both a few sections of statutory code and still does exist in a couple sections of regulatory text. Our sunset bill made the name change in the statutory sections, updating the Part 3 exam to its current name, which is Patient Encounters and Performance Skills. And so we want to make these corresponding changes in the appropriate regulatory sections. There are 3 of them. And so that is the context for letter C. Any questions there? Seeing none, I'll move to the last, which is letter D, amend the mobile optometric office permit requirements. We spoke earlier in the meeting about the business process changes that we needed to make pursuant to the MOO or mobile optometric office changes that happened in SB 776, most consequentially around the number of permits that you can acquire in your first renewal, your first licensure cycle, which was 12 and now has no cap, as well as a change around the reporting cycle for these permittees, which prior to SB 776 gave them the option of either a quarterly report or an annual report. And so we are updating our regulatory text to be synonymous with what it is in statute. So no cap of 12 and a requirement of an annual report. There was also some statutory changes for MOO regarding the follow-up information or services that need to be provided to the communities the MOO permittees are servicing. All of this is text change, and so we're just updating, again, those statutory requirements into the requirements for the regulatory text. These edits occur in 3 different sections pertaining to MOO, and so that is the update for the mobile optometric office regulatory changes. If there are no questions on any of these changes, I would love to entertain a motion to direct us to work with our regulatory counsel to file these Section 100 rulemakings. Counsel, I don't know if we need to take one at a time or if we can do all 4.
Just give me 1 second to double check them.
And while council is thinking, you started off by saying that you had the authority delegated to you to handle these.
Yeah.
And I think correctly, you said your primary goal in bringing them to us was to inform us of what was going on. Given that there was no comment or discussion, and I think we all consider them to be appropriate ministerial tasks, do we even need to do a motion, or could we turn it back to you and say, thank you for the update? And by the way, thank you for the update.
Yeah.
But
They do not have to be formally approved in that way, like a normal regulation must be approved. That you're absolutely right. You know, I think the reason why I brought it is just accountability, keeping me honest and staff honest, and board approves them, then they show up on that 5D, which is the regulatory update, and it's just something that again, 2 of these 4 are things that should have been done a long time ago. And so just trying to keep us accountable. That's the only reason, but it doesn't have to be formally adopted by the board.
Council?
Oh,
Go ahead.
no, I was like, I agree with Alex. Plus, he gave Greg double thumbs up right there.
Also, too, I was checking with that regulatory counselor and she confirmed that they do not need to be approved. So I guess this is up to the board. I'm fine to approve them all at once then, or just taking public comment.
Well, it's on the agenda. Does it matter if we approve or not? Maybe not, but might as well. And I'll move to approve the action of the executive director in this area.
Okay, we have a motion. We'll take a second. Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any comments from those in the audience? Yes. Ruby?
Thank you very much. I just want for clarity. So if we have a foreign student who's an optometrist coming in now, they can just sit for the board and not have to go to, is that correct?
No. So
Clarification.
since 2018, no foreign graduate, say you came from Egypt, that's an example we've gotten, or the United Kingdom is another example we've gotten. There is no process for the board to authorize you or sponsor you to take any exam, except for our California Law and Regulations exam. Anybody can take that. You're 18, you pay the fee, you can take it. But the national board exams, which you have to pass to get licensed, there is no process for us to authorize you to sit for it. You have to have been a graduate of an accredited school of optometry, which is in the United States, Canada, or Puerto Rico.
Okay.
I think New Zealand too, perhaps. None of those other countries that may have optometry schools are part of, are accredited for purposes of state licensure in California. So we're not making any change that impacts any foreign graduate optometrists. We're just deleting existing text that is confusing because it speaks to a process that actually doesn't exist.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Thank you. Any comments from those online?
This is the moderator for members of the public on WebEx. If you would like to make a public comment on this item, please click the raise hand icon, or if you're an audio only participant, you can raise your hand by pressing *3 on your device. All right, and it appears there are no requests for public comment at this time.
Thank you. Harry Bragg, if we can have a roll call vote.
Member Clemens,
Aye.
Member Dawson,
Aye.
Member Sue,
Aye.
Member Kleppa,
Aye.
Dr. Pruitt,
Aye.
Dr. Tedder,
Aye.
Dr. Wong,
Aye.
Bragg, aye. Vice President Linden,
Aye.
President Garcia.
I vote aye. Motion passes. Thank you. Thank you, E.O. Pruden. Okay, moving on to item number 8, discussion and possible action on revised board member handbook. E.O. Pruden.
Well, hopefully we can spend a little bit of time on this item because we are way early in our agenda. Because all we have after this is future agenda items and then closed session and lunch is not scheduled for pickup till 12:30. So we may have to get creative here, but agenda item number 8 is our discussion and possible action on our revised board member handbook. Last year in July, we established a 2-member work group who was charged with reviewing and revising and refreshing the board's handbook. There's a hyperlink in the electronic materials to take you back to that update. Member Clemens and Vice President Linden were our 2 board members appointed to the work group. Myself, along with our administration and licensing manager and policy analyst, assisted in the process. Both board legal counsel and regulatory counsel also made very important contributions to this project. There's a few high-level changes that I want to just mention. They're also mentioned in your packet. But it's important to say that this is your handbook, right? This is the board member's handbook. It's not staff's handbook. It's your handbook. We put in place a couple accountability provisions. 2 that I want to just mention are a majority vote requirement from you all whenever substantial deviations or changes are made. We do have language in here that allows me to make technical non-substantive edits with a consultation to council. We felt that that was an important accountability measure. So that's included. We also felt that it was important to have a requirement that the EO and board president have an orientation session with new members. I mean, frankly, I'm very excited to hopefully have this thing get updated and approved, because when, new member Tedder gets appointed last year and I got to give him a 2019 handbook, it's like, well, I'm sorry, it's 5 years, 6 years old, but here we go. So having an updated handbook in the context of an orientation session for a new member, I think is really important and valuable, and really starts to create some buy-in to the work that you all are going to do as board members. There's a lot of just general revisions and updates that, as you might imagine, need to happen in the document that's been stale for so long, such as just updating some general rules of conduct for you all. Probably most obviously are the Bagley-Keene changes, which have, as you all know, have been significantly changed in the intervening years. And we also put in place some succession planning. There was no sort of, what happens if the board president and VP offices are both vacant? Who's kind of the officer in charge? We have 3 officers. The secretary is the 3rd officer, but there was no language that would allow the secretary to kind of step in to fulfill that president role, given any absence for the 2 other officer members. So we put that in place. There are at least 2 areas that we flagged that I want to hopefully have a conversation or a discussion with you all today about. There may be additional items that you all want to talk about as well, and we can certainly do that. The 2 that we have flagged are board member communications and the gift policy. In the packet, these are highlighted. The board member communications context is on page 14 of the handbook, which does have page numbers, and the gift policy is on page 36. So I don't know if the board has a flavor, or if you want to start with with those 2 discussion items and then go from there and see if other members have items to discuss. I'm happy to proceed as you all think is best here.
Let's start with your highlighted items.
Okay. So on page 14 is the first highlighted item, and as you can see, what this language is saying here is that we're talking about what constitutes a meeting. And as a general rule, anytime 3 members are together and discussing something that's under our jurisdiction, that would constitute a meeting. Similarly, by relaying information, you could trigger the serial meeting requirement. And the highlighted sentence is, since this can easily occur, board members should not discuss matters under the board's jurisdiction with each other outside of an officially noticed meeting. During the work group process and staff process of looking through these items, it was brought up that, might this potentially stifle communication that might be beneficial between members. There have been examples where a new member has shadowed or toured another member's office, for example. There may have been other occasions or discussions where a member may call, hey, what is glaucoma? I don't know anything about glaucoma, just more general kinds of things. We obviously have to be very careful of liability and not triggering any meeting requirements, but this was sort of this language sort of caused that question to come up about, is this too stringent? I mean, it's a good bright line, right? But we know that members, like as I said, there have been tours, there have been other conversations that have happened about, well, can you tell me more about this? And so is there a way to craft some language here that would protect the board and not violating any Bagley-Keene requirements, but might also allow for some sort of download of knowledge, if you will? And council, I don't know if there's more you want to say about that.
No.
There it is. So yeah, I think Greg did a really good job of kind of fleshing out the problem. I will add that this language pretty neatly mirrors the language found underneath the law itself. And the law does go on to provide some specific examples of things that won't trigger a meeting. But I guess the question is kind of for you guys is, what type of rule do you want? Do you guys want to have a nice, easy, bright line rule here that's just clear, straightforward to follow? Do you guys want to add in language that just tracks the law, which would require you guys to be a little bit more familiar with it? Or is there maybe something else you're particularly concerned about? So I guess that's kind of what we're trying to gauge and figure out here, and what you guys are looking like. I will say the problem with the bright line rule is, to make a bright line, we kind of have to step back a little bit farther from what is actually allowed. But then to go straight to the law could be a more complicated process and more taxing on you guys, and require you guys to hold more nuance within your heads. And as you guys have all been familiar, I usually follow the bright line rule during lunches. Like, let's just not talk shop. It makes everything safe. It makes everything easy. Makes sure that no one trips it up. But we don't have to do that.
Can I add a comment?
Sure.
As the public member who did the tour with Dr. Bragg, and I do thank her for that, I asked her a ton of questions about her practice and what she was doing at the time and how she was doing it. I would hate to think that that purely informational session would be a violation of board rules. It was never intended as such. It was simply informational. And I'd like to keep that option open in case I want to remedy my ignorance in the future.
Yeah, absolutely. And I recognize that. I mean, obviously, I'm not a board member, so I don't have this is not for me to sort of decide or figure out here, but I recognize that. I mean, my example there would be that in the almost year that we didn't have an optician member on the board, I'm like, who do I go talk to when I have optician questions, right? I mean, obviously, I can ask some of my OD members, but it's different, right? Not for me, not having that person that I could tell me more about that. I was hearing things about physical ailments that occur for opticians that maybe don't occur, for example, with optometrists so much, manipulation of instruments and things. I was like, well, that's interesting. I want to learn more about that. Not having somebody I could reach out to, was a problem for me. So I get that perspective of it. Also understand that we need to be sure that we're not violating anything, of course. So yeah, I don't know what that would look like in terms of including something in here about that.
Yeah. I'm just thinking, and I have no quarrel, obviously, with an attempt to improve the rules. I think probably there are many things in here that need to be improved. I'm not quite sure if this sentence is necessary, given that we're all professionals appointed to the board trying to do our best in a public protection context. And I'd like to be able to reach out and gain more information if I need to, not to influence a board decision, but to give me better background on the subject that we're all discussing. So my thought might be we would either modify or remove that sentence.
So to just clarify that for you, for Member Kleppa, so under Government Code Section 11122.5, if a meeting includes any congregation of a majority of the members of a state body at the same time and place to hear, discuss, and deliberate upon any item that is within the subject matter jurisdiction of the state body to which it pertains. So, and then there's other language where 3 members can trigger committee meetings. So that's where we kind of get the less than two members and less is generally a safe harbor. When we hit 3 members, it gets very complicated very quickly. And then we have the question of what is the subject matter jurisdiction of the board. That can be taken very broadly. So even doing like an informational session can be a meeting. That's why when we did the tour of the optician clinic, or the optician school, it was public because that was within the subject matter of the board as we determined.
So just to get clarification on that, are you saying that if I simply reached out to one of our board members with an informational question, I might be in violation of the existing law?
It could be possible because there's also the concept of a serial meeting, which I equate to a game of telephone, if you guys remember that from childhood. So, I mean, that is pretty much what it is.
If you reached out to a member about a topic under our jurisdiction and then that member reached out to another member, about that same topic, now that's 3 members, and that could constitute
That's a daisy chain rule, right?
exactly.
Yeah.
I understand that, but if it's general background information about, let's say, a medical condition or something like that, that should not necessarily trigger the rule, should
But
it?
it could.
But it could, you're saying if we're considering something related to that condition?
I
Is that-
mean, again, this is the question of like, how close do you guys want to be? Do you guys want to play with that nuance and be in charge of that yourselves? Of trying to figure out like, am I contacting a person? Is this going to be within our subject matter jurisdiction? Is this something we're talking about? Is this like, that can get complicated quickly. And like for your specific situation, would a straight up informational like review of that be within Beckley Keene? My initial reaction is probably yes, but I would probably need to do a full on legal analysis to really determine like, well, is that our subject matter jurisdiction? Are you just getting information? How does that work? Like, do we want to think about that? Are you guys discussing things? What are you guys talking about? Are you guys going to be talking more deeply about like, is this a good practice, a good way to do that? Is that outside the board's jurisdiction?
Hmm.
Do you see how like all those questions start to come into play and it's not so much that you talking to one member immediately triggers it.
Mhm.
It starts to become a slippery slope. And the question is, where do you guys as a board want to put up the wall on that slippery slope? As my professor said, slippery slopes lend themselves to wacky walls. So where would you like your wacky wall to be?
Hmm. Well, okay, I certainly understand the concern, but on the other hand, I need to know what I need to know to do my job. So if I need to find out what an instrument does, because, that's something that may come up down the road, it's general background information not related to an active issue. To me, it'd be the same thing as attending a class that Dr. Wong or one of our other doctors was putting on. They're giving general information, I'm taking it down for my general understanding. It's not directly related to any issue before the board, as far as I'm concerned.
Which you can make that argument, but again, the key thing about remembering about Bagley Keene is Bagley Keene protects public participation in board discussions and
Right.
decisions. So there would be a distinction between Member Bragg giving a class to the entire public and you choosing to attend that
Mhm.
versus you guys having an individual conversation about that. Which could lead itself to another possible way to handle this is we could keep the general prohibition or maybe broaden up to say without first contacting either the executive officer or legal counsel. And we could also reference the exceptions under 111 to 2.5. But again, the downside of that is then it will put more effort and time and compliance energy on you guys. So
Council, a serial meeting is not triggered if a board member were to ask me a question, I were to go to another board member, get that information, and then relay it to the first board member. I'm not a board member, so there's no.
ooh, the relaying there, that feels close, and I will have to think about that.
I'm thinking of a way around, not that I'm trying to evade any legal requirement, but a way around triggering the concern that Member Klepper is raising about it possibly triggering a serial meeting. If you had a question about myopia, I don't know. Let me go ask.
Could I ask a question? So, and I find that there's a lot of value in the situation you're describing, Member Kleppa. Is there anything I saw a note earlier about orientation requirements now with the EXO and the president of the board? So could this be a situation perhaps that's included on the orientation? That's a formal orientation component of a new board member or a member that's outside of industry that could help here? I know that there's also going to be questions that come up throughout the board members' duration or tenure on the board, but in terms of just the broad industry knowledge, could that be something that's shared as part of orientation and then is formalized that way? Or
Probably.
Yeah, there could probably be something there too.
Yeah.
That might be an option.
I think, I don't want to feel like I'm picking on Member Kleppa and his example of the tour. I feel though that
You're not the first. It's okay.
that tour was very valuable for you. And even if Member Bragg had been, or Garcia had been in that orientation session with you, I still think you would have wanted to see it with your own eyes. And member Bragg works in a co-located setting where there's opticianry happening, and that was interesting to you, right? And we probably could have talked to you about all of those things. So you know, you were blue in the face, but you needed to see it, right? And be
I
there.
agree. It was very
So
valuable.
I
yes.
love that idea. I still think that example is going to happen too, right? Where it's like, I want to see X, Y, Z.
Though the way that the law might contemplate it is, because then I'm even thinking that, like, let's say Dr. Garcia shows up to every board orientation and does an explanation with all the board members. We are starting to at least flirt with the serial meeting at that point. So the way that it may be handled, if that is something if the board wishes to have this type of informational session, then maybe having a regular tour like once a year that's publicly noticed might be the option for that too.
If I may, I love what you just said. Let's work in some tours. Let's not find a workaround. Let's be very bright. I mean, it's the law.
Council, I have a question. So just for clarification for myself. So going back to the example, because it's real world. So Member Kleppa again has a question on radio frequency. Obviously, that's within the board's purview, and asks Dr. Bragg, explain radio frequency to me. That's okay, right? Because that doesn't violate Bagley-Keene.
Hold on, sorry.
One
He asked a question about
radio frequency to Dr. Bragg.
to Dr. Bragg.
Yeah, that because it's two people.
Yep.
And there's no daisy chain involved.
That would be probably, yeah, I
be
don't
fine.
think I have a concern about
Right.
that. Yeah, again, the concern comes then, but then member Bragg has to be more careful then about who she talks to in the future.
Right.
Or member Klepper then has to be
So
careful
I'm
about.
kind of
what
confused
he
on what we're trying to achieve on this item. Because I think we all are on the same page on what we can do and what we can't do. So what are we trying to parse out?
I think, member Lemon, this was your question. Did you want to add?
This is Member Linden. I actually raised this issue. I think, because if I was a new board member and I saw this sentence, board members should not discuss matters under the board's jurisdiction with each other outside of a noticed meeting. I feel like that very clearly says should not discuss anything with other members outside of a meeting. And I feel like, like the example that you just brought up, if you said, oh, I'm curious what this is, or just say, I was new to the board. Oh, I'm interested in children's vision. Oh, Lillian was around before then. Do you remember anything from that time? Like with no intent of surveying everyone, but just, oh, I'm interested in this issue. You were around. Can you tell me what happened the last time? Nothing being on the agenda or anything like that. I feel like these one-on-one conversations, purely informational or background, not related to anything, no intent to involve, 2 or 3, 3 or more board members. I would think, oh, I'm not allowed to do that. It says should not discuss anything with anyone else outside of a noticed meeting. I feel like for me, it seems like it sounds overly restrictive. And so I'm just wondering if there's a way, and I get what you're saying as well, if you say that these types of discussions are allowed, you don't want to raise this serial meeting thing, but is there a way to accomplish both without completely deterring someone from reaching out for like background information, like on a one-on-one basis?
Yeah, I think we're overcomplicating it because we already know what the rules are. I think if you bring it up in a meeting and Member Kleppa asks me a question in the corner, it's more likely to trigger a daisy chain, or someone's going to say, hey, what are you guys talking about? Or can you explain that to me? That's an automatic violation. So I think trying to restrict it to discussions to a meeting date makes it more dangerous, right? I'd rather have Member Kleppa call me or text me outside of the meeting one-on-one, and we both understand what the rules are, explain this to me, and then it's all good. So again, I'm not clear why we're discussing this so long.
Member Clemens chomping over at the bit over there.
We're discussing a line in our handbook. We're not discussing Bagley-Keene. Bagley-Keene trumps everything that's going on here. So let's remind ourselves what Bagley-Keene is there to do. serves an excellent purpose to avoid having bodies such as ours make decisions about policy and discipline and other things without public eyes on us. That's what we're discussing right here. We have several things. Somebody just said overcomplicating, and I completely agree with them. We don't want to handcuff our ability to be educated on things, but I'm a former fraud investigator for the San Francisco government. We looked at open meeting potential violations. Educating yourself on something does not trigger anything that any rational member of the public would file a complaint about. Does not create anything that Council Meyer would say, hey, you shouldn't ask a question about how a thing works. Where we cross a line is when we start to say, and I think that our board should react in this way, and every single person on this dais isn't going to do that. And if they do, government should stand in judgment of them, just as we stand in judgment of the people we regulate. We're all grown-ups. We all know how to talk to each other. We know the difference between, hey, how does this RF thing work? Can you explain it to me? And hey, this RF thing seems completely sketchy to me, and I think we should act X at the next board meeting. If we over-parse this, we're going to kill off conversation. Hey, how you doing? Oh, that might be illegal. I can't say, hey, how you doing to Jeff. I don't want that to happen. I think that asking us to behave like professional adults and not set any policy outside of this room in front of all of the public who have a right to see what we're doing is really easy to follow. And I wouldn't want to constrain our ability to say, how does this thing work? Or you're knowledgeable about that, let me know. Let's just not stride into policymaking outside our board, which I think all of us were already 100% clear upon at the outset of this. So this line here, however we choose to define it, does not change anything about Bagley-Keene. So I think it should say what it says, or frankly, the core of it strikes me as matters under the board's jurisdiction. Well, frankly, that's anything to do with the practice of what's going on. So I don't think that's right. I think it would be better to mirror the language in Bagley-Keene that says, don't do anything that might create a serial meeting or try to set policy outside of where the public's eyes exist. But I don't think we need to make it more restrictive than it is right now. Because if we violate what's going on, I hope an investigator shows up and knocks on our door and says, what are you doing? You should not do that.
I will just say for Member Clemens, the law, Bagley-Keene specifically states, here, discuss, deliberate within subject matter jurisdiction of the state body. So we could, if the format gets, it sounds like you guys just want to mirror Bagley-Keene. So we could just change this to saying all board member communications will comply with the Bagley-Keene
There
Open
we
Meeting
go.
Act.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. The trade-off of that is then that does mean that you guys are going to have to be familiarized with that. Do you think that works for new board members? Everyone good with that as a group decision?
Yeah, that's why it's in the handbook.
Mhm. Works for me.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, otherwise, we end up 50 people touring Dr. Bragg's office. That might not be good.
And I would like to remind members, though, do be careful about games of telephone.
Yeah.
About what?
It's always a good idea to check with me, right? Hey, I have a question about XYZ. I want to make sure I'm not violating Bagley-Keene. What I'm going to do whenever I hear Bagley-Keene, which is what I do now, is I check with council.
Also directly email me.
You could also go straight to Brendan as well. If you ever have a question about that, and whether you're approaching that line or not, that's, I think, always a good suggestion and a good idea. Okay, if there's no other comments about that item, the other item that we had flagged for discussion, I believe, lost my page number now.
36,
One more
the
time.
yellow at the top of 36.
There it is. Thank you. On page 36 applies to the gift policy. I recognize that you don't have all of the track changes here to see what I guess the current board policy said. The current board policy basically just prohibits gifts from candidates for licensure. This language here is a little bit more restrictive, right? It's applicants for licensure and lobbyists. why this was flagged was for a couple reasons. One, a recognition that not everybody wears the same hat or wears multiple hats, right? And you walk around in different settings and different professional places. Lobbyist is a very specific term, right? Not everybody who influences policy or legislation is in fact a lobbyist. So, and I think Council, you had some comments too on this one, so I want to make sure you chime in. But I think part of this is, again, this is bright line question, right? To avoid any trouble whatsoever, you just have a very simple bright line. Never accept any gift from anybody for any reason whatsoever. But we recognize, or at least I recognize the possibility of members maybe might receive a gift from somebody else not related to their board appointment, for example. And I don't know if we want this language to be so restrictive there. But then again, there's the other side of it, the appearances of impropriety, if you will. So Council, I know you had some feelings as well on this one. And we wanted to, again, bring it up to the board. This is your policy in your handbook, and see what you felt about it.
Yeah, again, this is very similar to the last conversation we have of you guys wanting to have a broader rule that requires you guys to take on more responsibility and understanding of your legal requirements, or do you want a bright light rule that's easy to follow? As someone who also has restrictions on gifts that they have to follow, I personally simplify it down to, I don't accept any gift if someone's given to me due to my position on the board. That there's more nuance there, but that's a nice way I handle it, and that makes my Form 700 very easy for me, in my opinion. But given the last conversation we had, I'm guessing you guys, and also there's a lot of nuance around like gifts and restrictions on conflicts of interest. So I'm kind of thinking we'll probably also want to do just follow the law type of section here too. Also, I did draft something up like on Wednesday for Greg, so I didn't make it into here. So I can also just read that off as a suggestion for this section, if y'all good with that.
Please.
Well, it's pretty quick. So the title would be Gifts, Travel, and Honorea. Board members shall comply with all laws and guidelines regarding conflicts of interest, including restrictions on accepting gifts, travel, and honorea. In particular, members shall familiarize themselves with the Political Reform Act and its accompanying regulations. And then additional resources can be found on the Fair Political Practices Commission's website, including specific fact sheets on gift, travel, and honorea for state officials.
Basically comply with the law.
Basically comply with the law. Go read the website.
Works for me.
Any other discussion on gifts? No. Okay.
So those were the two items that we had flagged in the handbook that we wanted to have a discussion with you all about. But this is your handbook, and certainly want to have the opportunity for you all to tell us if there's any other things, especially those members that were not part of the work group, in your review that you want to discuss, flag, have a conversation about. Yes, sir.
Member Klepp, I have a question. Revised general rules of conduct for board members. Where do I find that in the policy?
Okay, let's go to that.
No, I was looking in the table of contents. I didn't see it. I must have missed it.
It is going to be, that starts on page 6 and continues on to page 7.
Oh, okay.
Yes, Member Clemens.
While my colleague is refreshing his recollection on how we should all behave here, which I think we're doing a great job of. As one of the two people on this body, and thank you, Uni, who read all 55 pages of it and offered up suggestions and looked at it from my perspective for internal consistency, whether things spoke to each other and held together well. I'd like to commend staff for doing a great job on putting this together in a way where the number of edits that I thought we put forward were few, far between, and primarily asking a couple of questions and adding in a period or a semicolon here or there. It was a solidly put together document. Also, I always am slightly troubled when there are 55-page documents that are applicable to 11 people and nobody else in the world. It's good to have all this information. We should give it a read through once a year, but once again, most of it is guardrails for cars you will not be driving. And thank you again to staff for putting this together. Appreciate it.
You.
Appreciate you saying that. Thank you.
Oh, I reviewed the rules. They look fine to me.
Okay, good.
Any other questions from the board on the handbook? I'll entertain a motion to accept the handbook as written.
Well, no, not as written, because we had that one change, right?
Okay.
Two changes. Because
changes.
we're changing both the Bagley Keen
And the
language.
gift, that's right.
And the
Okay.
gift language
To approve the handbook with corrections
as described by staff.
as provided by staff.
Yeah, do you want to do that? I feel
Okay.
like it covers that. Don't you guys agree?
Okay. So we'll entertain a motion to do that.
I'll make that motion.
Okay, we have a motion. We have a second.
I'll second.
First and a second. Any comments from those in the audience?
Oh, actually, hold on. Can
Yes.
we withdraw that motion for a second? Because I think we
Yes.
also need to authorize staff to make final technical errors
Okay.
and changes and like grammatical changes as part of that.
Sure.
Yeah, that
Um,
is correct. We need to, there are just, final look through, the table of contents is all lined up and
Yes,
just
yes.
non-technical stuff.
Technical
is- So
corrections.
motion would be, I move to approve the draft handbook with the changes approved at this meeting. Well, you can read it. It's actually.
We have.
Read
You
it.
got it?
Okay,
Yeah, we have
I'm gonna,
some.
re- I'm going
It's
to make the
option
motion
2, I
now.
think.
Yes. I'm going to, make the motion to approve the draft board member handbook as provided in the materials, but with the changes approved at this meeting, and direct staff to finalize the board member handbook by working with the appropriate DCA units and publishing on the board website, and distribute a final copy to all members. In finalizing the board member handbook, the board authorizes the executive officer to make any technical or non-substantive changes.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Oh, I'm sorry. Before we get there,
Yes.
I noticed on page 5, there's a yellowed section. Do we need to address that? Mission
That's-
statement, did we?
That's
catch that?
part is, I believe, let me get there. I believe that is related to our mission statement,
Yeah,
which following the adoption of that strategic plan needs to be updated in the handbook to be consistent with what's now in the strategic plan. So it's just highlighted as an internal notes of staff
Oh.
to make the appropriate updates in the handbook pursuant to what was adopted earlier today in the strat plan.
fair enough. I just wanted to be sure we didn't overlook something. That was all.
Thank you, Member Kleppa. So we have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Anyone in the audience have any comments? Seeing none. Online, any comments on the handbook?
This is the moderator for members of the public on WebEx. If you would like to make a public comment on this item, please click that raise hand icon. Or if you're an audio-only participant, you can raise your hand by pressing *3 on your device. All right, and it appears there are no requests for public comment at this time.
Okay, thank you, moderator. So let's, Member Breck, if we can have a roll call vote.
Member Clemens,
Aye.
Member Dawson,
Aye.
Member Sue,
Aye.
Member Kleppa,
Aye.
Dr. Pruitt,
Aye.
Dr. Tedder,
Aye.
Dr. Wong,
Aye.
Dr. Braga, aye. Vice President Linden,
Aye.
President Garcia.
I vote aye. Thank you. Motion passes. Okay, we're moving on to item number 8. I think there were a couple of things that we wanted. I'm sorry, number 9, future agenda items. Do any members have items they would like to see on future agendas? Yeah, Member Kleppa?
It was a generalized discussion that I had with council and the executive director about possible solutions for what I recognize seems to be a problem in us taking matters back in closed session for determination without having any party telling us what they consider might be a problem with an ALJ decision. And I'm hoping that council can further research some possible solutions, such as a post-ALJ decision comment from both sides, whether it be in writing, probably in writing, that would possibly point out to us as members in that closed session some issues to review in looking at an ALJ decision and determining whether it should be adopted by the board. The reason I bring this up is because we have in prior cases taken a matter into closed session, reviewed an ALJ decision, and simply have the basic decision before us without any understanding of any issues that might exist related to that decision, because we were not involved in any of the litigation that led to that decision, and the parties have not been able to comment to our hearing on the elements of that decision. So I'd like to have a little more information walking in the closed session from the parties on things we should be looking at as a board.
Understood?
Any other items?
Member Clemens, we had the DOC item that you had mentioned earlier about process and recruitment. You want to state it in your words?
What I said earlier, once again, let's set a timeline and deadlines for recruitment. And also, if it is not prohibited, once the website is up and running, if you could notify, which you're probably already planning to do, all staff, all members of the board, all partner and affiliate agencies that it's up and running, because I think there's a decent shot by our next meeting, we'll already have a strong pool of candidates and perhaps can move to the next step immediately. So can we do that, please?
Got it.
Any
Uh,
other items from the board?
Council, can I ask about a possibility of a future meeting?
Yep.
Our next scheduled meeting is in April. I believe we are going to need to have a meeting before then. Probably the first week of March would be ideal to discuss pending and future items that won't be able to wait until April. So I'm putting that out there. Now we don't have to determine the date right this second, I don't think.
We could.
We could. We would anticipate, notwithstanding our board policy to have our meetings in person, this would be, given the items that we need to discuss for this meeting, we would be anticipating scheduling this as a teleconference meeting, much like we did last summer, where members are in various publicly noticed locations around the state. In other words, you're not traveling to Sacramento or any one specific location. So if we have time now, maybe folks could look at first week of March. That would be great for a teleconference board meeting. I think I don't have a real sense of how long we might need, but I think at least a couple hours.
I think I can chime in a little bit here. So I think we're going to need a 1 to 2 hour closed session basically to discuss a matter that we weren't able to put on the agenda today. So based off of a quick conversation with Greg, and Greg chime in if you disagree, we think a teleconference meeting would handle this. That would require board members to find a location that is both accessible to the public, but that they can also control afterwards for closed session. So, because we'll need to come in, do quick, like, items on the agenda, future agenda items, and probably move into closed session.
Yeah.
So we can, if you guys, we are allowed in future agenda items to do some minor planning. So if you guys want to look at your calendar right now for your availability, to see if we can maybe have like a majority of members any time around the first week of March, we could do that. Or we could also push this on to later.
I'm going to suggest March 2nd, which is a Monday.
Any other comments on that date? Conflicts?
What time are we proposing?
Any time that works best for you all would work for staff.
Are we thinking 9 a.m.?
We could do that.
Member Dawson?
If it's March 2nd, it would have to be after 10 for me. And Greg, Mr. Pruden, I'd have to talk to you about a location probably.
Yeah.
You help me find one.
Yeah, absolutely. 10 to noon-ish.
Paul, you good?
Member Clemens, what do you think?
if it's possible to move it into the afternoon. I've got a couple standing Monday morning meetings that are difficult to move, but public service will trump.
Staff is flexible here, so if we want to do 1 to 3, 2 to 5, whatever works for y'all.
Both of those work for me also.
The tentative afternoon meeting.
Tentative
on
afternoon.
March 2nd.
Next, March 2nd, work.
So we're talking like 2 to 4, 3 to 5. 3 to 5?
Somewhere in there.
3 at the
3 to
front.
5.
3 to 5.
Okay.
Yeah.
That work for folks down there?
And we can leave this without like a motion so that if for some reason there's not spaces and we have to pivot, we can. This is just kind of
We
everyone.
will, yeah, staff will be following up because I know we may need to secure some spots, locations.
And
Yes.
will staff be in a centralized location that members can join if that's easy for them?
Yeah.
Great.
I could also even look into seeing if I could find a space in the bay too for some members.
Yeah. Yeah.
Actually, I might need some help finding a space as well. I don't know if the university is going to have something for me that fast.
Okay. Yeah, we will reach out and figure that out. So that was the item I had for future agenda items. Anybody else have any other items?
Just a suggestion.
Yes.
Well, I was happy to see us down in Orange County at our last.
Yes.
I'm hoping sometime this year we can have another meeting outside of Sacramento. I mean, online is useful, but letting more members of the public attend should they choose to, I think is a good idea.
Totally agree with you. We're required by law every year to have one in a location other than Northern California, I believe. And we anticipate doing that. We were, maybe it'll be Western's turn. I don't know, because we were at Ketchum, right? Yeah, that's something that's been talked about and looked at. We don't have it's not all logistically planned yet, but I would be targeting that same October meeting, especially at a school because school's in session.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, any public comment on future agenda items? See none online, please.
This is the moderator for members of the public on WebEx. If you would like to make a public comment on this item, please click the raise hand icon, or if you're an audio only participant, you can raise your hand by pressing *3 on your device. All right, and it appears there are no requests for public comment at this time.
All right, thank you, EO Pruden.
Yeah, I think actually one more member wanted to bring something up.
There's just been some issues going on with the Kentucky State Board of Optometry. So if we could maybe put that on future agenda items for the next.
Is that sufficient, Brandon, or do we need to say anything more? Okay.
All right, so we're moving on to closed session. EO Pruden, how would you like to move forward?
So we arrived at this part of the agenda a little bit earlier than I thought. Our lunch pickup is not till 12:30. By the time it's picked up and brought back here, it's, I don't know, closer to 1-ish, I would guess. There's 3 items on closed session, Brennan. Should we take a few-minute break, allow any WebEx? I know for one of our folks has to call in, so we will have to have that happen. Are the 3 items in closed session, can they go out of order or do they have to? Okay.
Do we want to just maybe go into closed session at noon and then we can
Let's
work on the order within closed session?
Let's take a break from now until noon. So it's about 12-minute break. And then we'll go into closed session in noon.
And are we adjourning straight from closed session?
We're going to adjourn straight from closed session. Does
Okay.
that work? Okay.
Okay, we'll take a 12-minute break and then we'll reconvene. Thank you.